you have come to the place where you can learn to harness the power of intention, to create subconscious beliefs that serve you, and to gain insights that allow you to create a life, personally and professionally, that you desire. This is the place where you leverage your subconscious mind and design your destiny. Join me now, your host, Penny Chason. Hey, joyful souls. It is Penny, and I am back with a special guest today, Dr. Tulay Massey. And she is someone who I love very much because she is just such a great energy. She's heart, and she has had some huge changes in her life. All of you know that I went from having a J.O.B. to running my own business, and her story is similar. And I just love her story, and I want her to share it with you and some of the challenges and the thinking that she's had to overcome to get to this point. Because if you're out there listening and you're in the J.O.B. or you've had a J.O.B. and you're either thinking about starting your business or you're starting a business or just want to make a massive change in your life, I have a feeling we're going to have some pearls here that are really going to make a difference in how you look at that and think about that. So welcome, Tulay.
Thank you, Penny. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so tell everybody a little bit about you.
Oh, where to start? So my name is Dr. Tulay Massey, and I'm the founder of Tulay Massey Coaching and the creator of the Serenity Method. This is my introduction, but I haven't always been this way. I'm originally from Turkey. I am a trained food and dairy scientist, and I have worked over 18 years in a corporate job, over the same job, working and developing food and beverages for a really big beverage company. So I've been a scientist most of my life, really.
Yeah, so being a scientist, if you're like I was in healthcare, you're accustomed to protocols and checklists and there's a process for everything. And while in business, there's a process, there's also a lot of creativity, a lot of vision building. And we were talking before we began, and you mentioned that you first discovered that you had a knack for something else in 2005.
Right. Yes. So the company that I work with, which I am really grateful for all these years, has valued diversity a lot. In fact, it was because of them valuing diversity that I was able to get the job in the first place, because I came to the UK with a scholarship, which I had to pay back. And in order for me to not be able to go back, I had to obviously have a job. And the first thing in the job interview was not in application form was, do you need a work permit? And then for some people, if you tick that, you couldn't even get to the second question. So this company accepted me as a foreign student or a foreign person into their world. So they valued diversity. So what I trained as a trainer to train people in different aspects of diversity. How do we value diversity at workplace? As being a different person, being a morning person, and all that sort of stuff. So that was so good, because every time I got on that stage, I felt myself light up. I felt myself alive. And I could feel the aliveness in the room when I was doing my training. So that was really kind of infectious for me. That's when I first realized I really love this thing.
Yeah. And, I think it's important. A lot of people ask me, either clients or participants in my workshop or my membership, they will ask me, how do I find alignment? Like, how do I find my dharma, my calling? And it's like, get curious, see what else is out there. If you're not feeling what's lighting you up, then experiment, play, give yourself permission to try things you would never try before and just see what happens. Now, you did the training in the company for a while, and then you had your first, we'll just call them a coaching student, but you were mentoring someone. What happened at that point?
So in 2010, we have really summer students that come to our workplace at the time for a whole year. And when they come, they just come out fresh out of university. They've got so much to learn, but they need to completely independently do a project by the end of the year and present that. So And when I had my first student, she was so timid and so kind of shy and whatever. But I held her hand and actually really helped her come out. And by the end, like 3 months before, after Christmas, they start generally in July. After Christmas, she was coming to me, here's my plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is who I'm going to talk to, and all this sort of stuff. And by the end of her presentation, in the actual final presentation, I was literally in tears because of the growth that she had. And I realized, my God, this is just really gives me chills doing this sort of stuff. And since then, I've had 10 years of students come in, year in, year out, and they achieved exactly the same results. Come in as really timid, and they were really good at what they're doing, but they're obviously in the setting of an industry. They don't know what they're doing. And for me to be able to give them that confidence without having to micromanage and actually allow them to become their own, I realized there was a skill that I had innate within me. So
and you bring up a very good point. I don't do formal coaching. I coach people around their emotions and interpretations and perception and those types of things that are connected to the subconscious work that I do. But you bring up a very good point, because I'm in a lot of entrepreneur groups online, and there are a lot of people that, haven't come to the point yet where they realize they have inside of them what they need, and that they want that hand holding and someone to just tell them what to do. And I know there are coaches out there that will do done for you plans. And that's one thing. Sometimes you need done for you, but when you're in personal development, I think it's important to have someone that empowers you to find your own way, to find it within you, what it takes to develop these qualities. So I think that's, a really awesome place to be. Now, you discovered you had this passion. It reignited this fire, but you stayed in your job. So why don't you elaborate a little bit, just to the degree that you want to, about why you chose to stay in that space rather than venturing out?
Like I said, I was having my students every year. I was kind of enjoying my job, but I also had other life goals, one of which being being a mom. And at that point, I was just about pregnant with my first child. And so I always imagined and I always wanted to have a boy and a girl. And our son, born in 2011, born prematurely. And yes, so he was our first baby, and that's great. We achieved it. So he's all fantastic. I went back to work, carried on, and still having the vision that I'm going to have a girl. Now this is my next aim. In between, I just kind of coast because I still like my job. I was good at it. I was able to do it with my eyes closed, as it were, because I was so proficient at it at the time. And then I had my girl. And it was only after I went back, almost a year after I went back from the maternity of my girl, this is about 2018, early 2018, I actually had the flu, literally, and I was in bed for 7 weeks. It really, really nasty it was. And at that time, on return, I didn't have any energy. I actually started to not even be around my own children, let alone be at work in that place. And I just started the questions like, what am I doing here? This is not what I'm here to do. And there is something inside of me, but I didn't quite know what it was. At that point, I went in my lowest of lowest points. So I went back to the drawing board, as it were, and just revisited one of those personality tests that you take, you probably take a few of those in your time. And this was the MBTI one. And I went back and read my personality says, you're born to be a coach. I was like, of course I have. And that's when I realized, of course it is. And this has been telling me already. I took that test in 2011 and I retook it again. And it was exactly the same result every time it comes back. And I was like, okay, so what am I doing here? So let me go and find out how to become a coach. And it was at that point, in more or less the same sort of time, I actually came across James Wedmore's episode with Jim Fortin in 114 when he was talking about be to have and stuff like that. And then that's what really, really kind of clarified it for me, really. And you need to stop hiding behind all of this and really get yourself in gear to do something about it. So
yeah, I'm all of you out there listening, you can't see her face. She's grinning from ear to ear because she and I both have been what I call hashtag Fortinized. In the last 2.5 years, I have learned more about living life, to actually live life and not exist on this planet, than I learned in the 48 years before. And there just really aren't words to describe it. Now, within that program, there's a lot of talk about our identity, our beliefs, our habits. How did that resonate? Because I bring that in with my clients now. It's one of the reasons I get the results I get. I don't just do hypnosis, right? I bring this into it because this is something we have to integrate within ourselves to understand. How did that identity piece and the beliefs begin to move you to where you are now?
So I was always very, I was a good student. I've learned everything. I've ticked everything. I achieved stuff. And, but I realized in the last year, it was always to get that appreciation and the approval of someone, especially at workplace, because I knew that there was so much in me. I kind of hit my glass ceiling at that point in time. And with little things I was trying to do, still trying to get the approval and whatever. So every time I would revert back to, I must make it even better in order to make it better. So it was kind of that sort of, I was referring back to that. And I realized actually, in order for me to change and be the example, I need to be the change that I want people to experience. I know it's a cliche, we say this, but I actually made that decision. I need to be the change. And literally, in the last couple of years at work, any free coffee time that I would find with people, I would practice my skills on them. Here we go, half an hour, let's go have some coffee. I'm going to practice on you.
I think that's awesome. And you say something that enters my mind all the time. And that is that we're very good at, whether it's a book, listening to a talk show, a podcast, scrolling Facebook and looking at motivational memes, like you'll see people share, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, embody that. It's not enough to say, I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world. We have to ask ourselves, what does the person that I want the world to look like, what do they think? What do they do? How are they showing up? And then embodying that within ourselves. And one of the things that I consider, and I don't know how this resonates with you, I would love to know what you think or how you feel about it. My thoughts on this are that when we say that statement, be the change you want to see in the world, and we're saying that from the ego perspective, that we already are what the world needs to be, it's one of the things I've learned, we're coming from the wrong place. Because we are always evolving. We're always shedding our past. We're always learning lessons and looking for a better way to be. So I don't know. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What that brings up for me is that how I made that decision and why is because as I was doing my life coaching course, I become aware of so many things, how we get triggered, why we get triggered. And there were so many things that was triggering me at work, but I realized that it was because of what's in my head, what was going on inside of me. And I could see so many of my colleagues doing exactly the same. So I decided that I'm going to practice being this change now by not being so reactive, but understanding where the other person is coming from. And then this is what I started to talk to people about. So seek to understand first, because I would almost immediately, anytime somebody says something, take that so personally. I would just like carry it with me forever and then almost wear it like a badge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, several years ago, it's been many years ago, it became a thing here in the US where, the word triggered became popular. And if you were on media and you watched TV and the news, as I did at that time, being triggered was associated with just not being able to be adult, not being able to handle the truth. Now, what I realize is that being triggered is something that shows us that we have something inside of us that we need to evaluate. It needs to be healed. We need to look at what about this other person caused us to have this reaction. And like, how can I heal that? How can I make a difference? Not necessarily that the other person is wrong for triggering us, and awareness. You talked about being aware. I preach awareness on this podcast all the time. I say preach. It's not a religion here, but awareness is the core of everything, because if we aren't aware, then we can't evolve. Bottom line. So here you are, you're moving through, you're coaching on coffee breaks, you're finding this passion, you've had the flu, you're like, what is going on with my life? What am I doing here? At what point did you decide to start your own business? And what did that look like, moving from corporate into business for you?
Well, yeah. So at that point, I was obviously listening a lot of James Wedmore stuff. And in 2018, there's this business course comes in BBD. Yay, great. Like literally 3 months after I trained as a life coach, I enrolled in BBD. And that's, for those of you who don't know, BBD essentially stands for Business by Your Design. So you can design your own business. And this program gives all the processes that you can possibly need for life. That's an amazing. It gave me the confidence. So I started every single process. What do I do? A webinar process, whatever. But then there's always this on the sidelines. Oh, great. I can do this. I can do that, but still haven't done anything. So I have decided, again, towards the middle of 2018, I was like, I cannot live another year like this. And the same thing, every June, the old students would go, the new ones would come, and I would still be in the same place. And it just was so painful for me. And so I decided this is going to be the last year I get to see these students coming in. And I will not be celebrating my 20 years. That was my intention, that I literally just put it on the ground, put a stake in the ground. And I was even telling my closest colleagues, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to be celebrating my 20 years here. So that was something that I said. So I decided January 2019, I'm going to do a webinar in May 2019. Here's the topic. Don't care, whatever. I put all my systems, got my Kajabi up and running, and I told 3 friends to make sure that I stick to it. And off I went, my first webinar. And I had only like 75 people in my email list as a result of the webinar. Started from the 12 that people knew me, whatever. And that's how I started. I started a Facebook group and all that sort of stuff. All I knew, because I needed to take the leap. Only 3, 4, 5 people turned up, one of which was my old student, and one of which was my husband. But who cares? I practiced. I showed up. I went to the end. I practiced the system, the follow-up sequence, and all that sort of stuff. And since then, I've done more and more and more. But it's just basically to answer your question, all I did have to do is just to take that leap. Start from somewhere. Allow me to be able to make mistakes, fail, and learn. And oh my God, the learning. We keep hearing other people saying that there's so much learning in failure, but until you fail and go through the emotions and the stuff, you just don't. Because I even had the post-traumatic launch disorder, as they call it, for a bit. But, now having done my 5th launch, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll make it easy this time. It's easy.
Yeah. And, I don't do the big launch process. I email my list whenever, I have something going on, because I keep my program very small and intimate. But I've had the launch where I had 1 person sign up. I've had the launch where I had 0 people sign up. And I've had the deal where I've had 15 or 20, and 20 is my max in a group. So, it works out exactly as it should. Now, we were talking before, like there was a point where, you said you didn't have the guts to leave the 4 walls. What was that about?
So, yeah, you were talking about habits, literally since finishing my PhD at university. That was the first job I've ever applied for. That was the first job I had. That's all I knew within those four walls. Every morning I'd get up and go to work, get my coffee, chat with my colleagues. And I loved that. And I really loved the extracurricular stuff that we were doing and giving me the fulfillment up to a certain point. And like I said, I hit my glass ceiling. And in the last year, since I decided I wasn't going to be there for 20 years, literally I disconnected from it all mentally. I mean, I would still show up and do the work. Like I said, I always do it anyway, because I'm a good person, good student, I'll show up. But in the heart, mentally, I had disconnected. I could no longer even relate to the people who were there anymore, even though they were my dear friends. I couldn't even speak about the topics that they were speaking about. I could not relate to any of it because I was literally disconnected from the heart and from the head. And that's basically when I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. How it's going to happen, I have no idea. But at least I had my foot externally somewhere else that I knew that I could do it. And I was now starting to surround myself with those sort of people. And also the other thing you were saying, we were all Fortinized. So I joined Jim Fortin's program in September 2019, having already done it alongside my husband in May 2019. I thought I need to get into this coaching. Doing from the sidelines is one thing, but being in that hot seat and getting that coaching is another entirely. So, and in the first coaching call, I was the second hot seat already, and that was it.
Yeah. That's something to be in a hot seat.
Yes. And actually watching back that hot seat still with Jim, I was still resisting. I was still kind of working against myself. And he was almost, I don't want to say struggling, but he wasn't getting through to me because I was still putting up so much resistance. I can only see it now, but yeah, it was interesting. But obviously it shifted a lot. Still.
Yeah. And, those layers peel away bit by bit. But sometimes for some of us, that resistance comes from deeply held patterns of a protective mechanism, and even though as adults it's not serving us, but at some point we felt those protective mechanisms were serving us to either hold back or to not be seen or to, feel we had to rely on others, whatever that looks like. It looks like something different for everyone, but it usually comes back down to some of the same basic fears or concerns that we have built upon over the years. Now, being in that program, I know that you were introduced into self-hypnosis there. Mm-hmm. And it's all about visualizing your life as if you're already where you want to be and conditioning your mind that, yes, this is comfortable. Yes, okay, this opportunity is going to get me to point B. So once your mind becomes associated with your point B, it will naturally begin to look for opportunities that get you there that you might have otherwise would have missed. But you and I did some work together, and I would love it if you would share. We talked a little bit beforehand. What was the shift that the one-on-one work created for you, and what did it open up for you?
Yeah. So before we worked together, I was looking for something to be wrong because I was constantly angry towards especially the people I was just surrounded by, like my husband, my son, and so forth. So I was constantly angry, frustrated, and really not very nice to be around, to be honest. So I was looking for what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? What's happening? Why is this caused by? So having done the work with you, I realized actually there was nothing. So I was looking for a problem that didn't exist. The only thing that was happening is that I was essentially, I used to call myself a waste of space. I have a PhD, for God's sake. I've achieved the best I can in my job, and I'm a good person, whatever, but I still called myself a waste of space because I was so frustrated. And why? Because I couldn't live the purpose that I was here for. There was so much to give, but I couldn't give. And that frustration essentially translated into being angry with other people. Well, I realized that I had to just have a good look and forgive myself for whatever it is that I'm angry about and just accept it and then move on. Basically, yeah.
Yeah. And you bring up an amazing point because I have been here, I have experienced this, and I'm not going to digress into my story. If you want to know where being in alignment got me, go back to my November 2020 episode about suicide awareness, because that's where my anger got me. But it all boiled down to exactly what you experienced. Not doing what you were passionate about was creating that underlying tension, which created frustration, and it was spilling over into everything else.
Yes, and it is not a very good place to be, for sure.
No, no.
Not for me, not for anybody. And it's just basically crying out for, there is more to me than just this. And having realized that, leaving the four walls actually became not difficult anymore. It became an effect of the cause that I sorted out, if that makes sense. And in the self-hypnosis that I was doing, all I was doing is the waving from the other side of the gate to my colleagues with a smile on my face. And that's all I would visualize
I love that.
for those 3 months.
I absolutely love that. And, I'm going to let you leave everyone with one nugget of wisdom before we go. But the one thing that I would like for people to get out of everything that we've discussed here is that there is no one and done in improving your life. Whether you coach others, you're being coached by others. If you want to continue to evolve, you have to seek more that's outside of yourself. And you have to seek to heal what's inside of yourself, what needs to be healed. I have people reach back out to me like after a year of having worked together and says, oh, this thing came up. I feel like there's something there. I've done the journaling. I've done the mindset work, and it's still just kind of eating at me. Can we just kind of clear this little thing out? We'll reconnect and we'll work on that one thing. And it's definitely an evolutionary process. I mean, I've been in Jim Fortin's program for 2.5 years. I know Adrian was in for over a year, probably like 16 months. It's been a pleasure to know both of you because you're both inspiring to me. And I'm excited to have you here. So what would, knowing that this is about people creating what they want in life, to use that subconscious, to use their mindset to create their destiny, what would you leave people with?
Yeah, this is something that I come across so much now with the people that I work with as well, and the kind of people I work with. Everybody's worried about uncertainty. So what's going to happen on the other side? And because of that uncertainty, they stay in their comfort zone. And as we all know, comfort zone doesn't exist. It's something that's created by our brain. So, and I tell them, until you take that leap, nothing is going to happen for you. And there's like a chicken and an egg. All I can say to them, there is so much more than you can possibly imagine right now on the other side. But allow yourself to be able to imagine it, because when you do imagine, that will come to you quicker than you can even say the word imagine. That makes sense.
Exactly. And the only thing that creates an air fingers quote comfort zone is the fact that it is familiar to our brain. When we are going through a familiar routine, familiar circumstances with familiar people, doing familiar things, the brain is like, oh, okay, I recognize this. I'm cool. The minute your brain has to start to figure out what's going on, it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I just love that you wrapped it up with that. Have you spent thousands of hours and dollars working with coaches, doing the mindset work, taking advantage of every course, tool, tip, trick, or technique that you can get your hands on so that you can lead your most joyful, most fulfilling life, yet you still find yourself hesitating or holding back? Then I would like for you to consider a call with our team. Head over to pennychason.com and let's have a chat today and see if you would be a good fit for the subconscious work that gets these blocks out of your way so you can move forward in life. You have a special gift for people, and it's something that comes naturally to you. I want you to share with everyone. You have an offer coming up, and where can people find out more about you, your offer, and where can they find you on social media?
Yes, so I have a Facebook page, Tulay Massey Coaching. I have my website is tulaymasseycoaching.com, essentially simple as that. And I normally offer people a 8 weeks coaching program that basically mastering the serenity principles, because I came from chaos to achieve serenity in my life. And this is specifically for high achieving corporate women, like I was at that time, when they are scared of finding their purpose, when they are scared of what that next step is going to be. I have them, I can tell them exactly, I can teach them, and I can guide them through exactly every step. And, I've created so many transformations for people, and I want everybody to be able to experience that. And people wonder, uncertain, I don't even know where I am. So the first thing to start with is this really simple workbook that I have people, a few questions to sit down and answer for yourself. Where in my life I'm actually not quite aligned? What is not working for me? What is really working? Where can I, it's like riding a bike with a buckled wheel. If the wheel is buckled, you can't ride it, right? So you need to start looking at it. What is it that you're trying to avoid, and really face it? And when having done that exercise, I'll be there to really show the mirror and hold your hand whilst you're looking at that mirror. And then that's kind of goes from there, really. So, yeah.
Awesome. So, everyone, we will have these links on the website so that you can easily find Tulay. I encourage you to reach out to her if you are in corporate, you are a professional woman, and you find that you're in chaos, and let her help you out with that. Thank you again, Tulay, for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you. And everyone, I will catch you next time. Bye now. Thanks for tuning in today. I would love it if you would head over to iTunes and leave a positive review about how this episode has helped you to improve your life. When you leave a positive review, it helps us to reach even more people, helping them to change their lives, and that positive energy and vibration of sharing comes back to you as we spread the message of how you can use the power of intention, creating stronger subconscious beliefs, and raising our vibration to create the life that we desire, the one that we're here to truly live so that we can fulfill our purpose in life. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.